This is Mark in the Center for Online Learning and Innovation with another video in our tutorial series on data gathering using the Qualtrics survey platform. In Qualtrics, a block is simply a container for a set of questions in your form. They serve several purposes, from simply organizing your questions by topic to enabling things like branch logic, loop and merge, or randomization. Learning about blocks is a key stepping stone to using more advanced features in Qualtrics. Let's take a look. In the case of this survey, I already have my questions installed. Ordinarily, when you start a brand new survey, you're just going to get one empty block and usually an empty multiple choice question to get started. I have my questions organized into blocks here because eventually I want to install some conditional logic. Depending on how respondents will answer this first question, have you completed your undergraduate degree, that will determine which blocks below or subsequently they see as they're filling out the form. But even without conditional logic, when building longer forms, I like using blocks for two reasons. Blocks help me organize my questions. I may have a set of demographic questions or some sort of general questions up at the top at the beginning, and then I get into more specialized subjects down below, each subject organized into its own block. Incidentally, when I'm working with blocks of questions in the form editor, if I click this little arrow to the left of a block's title, it collapses the block. Now the questions are still there. I can click the arrow and bring them right back. But this is handy if you've got a long form and you really want to reduce the amount of scrolling you have to do to find a particular question that you want to work on right now. Related to this is that blocks install page breaks that interact with a progress bar to give my respondents subtle encouragement to keep going until the end of the form. If I organize my questions by subject on different pages, it can also help a respondent focus on a particular topic as she or he is working through the form. Let's install a progress bar in this Qualtrics survey. I go to Look and Feel up in the upper left-hand corner. I click that, and there's a drop-down here for Progress Bar, and I'll choose with verbose text from the options. Now I can see basically what that'll look like in this preview window, but let's click Save to install it in the survey, and then I'll go to Preview Survey, and you can see how this works. So if I move to the next page, this blue bar has advanced along this gray bar, and as I move through subsequent pages, it'll continue to advance, thus showing me, the respondent, about how far I've got to go to finish the survey. Qualtrics has at least one other separate page break option, which works essentially the same for that, except that it doesn't let me do other things like collapse question sets in the editor or conditional logic. So I click any particular question. Let's click this one right here. And then I go over to the right-hand menu and I choose Add Page Break. Qualtrics adds the page break below that question, and just like questions, I can move it using these little buttons on the left, and I can delete it if I don't want it by clicking the red minus icon to the right. In general, I use blocks for page breaks since that also gives me other options. You can easily add a block to your form by clicking Add Block at any of these links between existing blocks in your form. Click Add Block. Here's an empty block. After I've created it, I can add questions to it just like any other block, or just like when I first start a new survey. Click Create a New Question, and it by default creates a multiple choice question. I also can move questions into this block by using the movement arrows for any question. If I want to rename a block, I click on the block's name in the upper left and click outside the text box when I'm done. The block is renamed. Other block options are under this menu to the right. One of the useful options here is I can copy a block of questions. This is handy if you need a series of questions that are almost identical or at least very similar to an existing set of questions that you have in your form already. You can simply copy them as a block and then make the changes to the second set of questions as needed. You can also move blocks up and down relative to one another from this menu, but in another tutorial video where I cover survey flow, I'll show you an easier way to do that. There's some other options here you can experiment with, but I'll just mention delete block. As you can imagine, this allows you to delete a block, although Qualtrics will give you a warning dialog before you do that.